make funny faces. How's everybody doing today? Thanks for all coming. Nice turnout. Before I get started with what I have to say, I usually like to ask the audience for a couple questions that I can weave into the discussion, because I can talk forever. For at least many hours on my own topics, let alone what you guys actually want to hear. So I usually like to make it a combination of both, relevant news as well as your own fulfillment of why you're here anyway to begin with. So yeah, maybe if there's a couple of things you want to just tell me, throw it out into the air now, and if I forget, I'll remind you later to ask me.
I don't actually understand what exactly it is that you do. So.
Yeah, I have to change some of the wording, because they always use the same wording every time, and they never actually change it for me when I tell them to. So.
Maybe just give a synopsis, like a little.
Sure, yeah, definitely, yeah. Because I can cover so many different territories, from the spiritual angle of things as well as the conspiratorial side of reality, and from extraterrestrials to spiritual traditions, and a lot of areas. There's some good videos of myself on YouTube. You'll also recommend if you type my name in there. They actually have my spelling correct in the lecture segment, but not in the panel section. They always spelled it wrong in one of the two. So there's part of Mercury, I guess. Although that happens all the time. So. Anybody else with questions before I start? Or you may have some after I start talking. That's usually more like back there. Yeah. Oh yeah, actually, there's supposed to be like a mic, isn't there? I thought there was a mic there.
What are you attached to?
No, this is to record it. Was there one before?
No, there wasn't.
Wow, okay.
Can you talk louder?
Well, now I will definitely, okay.
Tough crowd.
Do you make predictions sometimes?
That's why we moved
Some,
up.
but if you want to include, okay. Yeah, any questions in the back? And if I start yelling out, we'll see, this will be funny. Don't be shy. Come on here, Chris. It could be anything seemingly random that might be out there or in the fringe territory that you may have wanted to ask but haven't got a chance to yet. Yeah.
Where are we going in terms of our future? Not so much humanity, I'm talking about America, the United States.
Oh, it's a little more boring. But yeah, okay. I'd rather deal with the Earth than with the U.S., but okay. We'll see. Okay. Sure. Okay. Yes.
And then if another group comes to you and it's different energy, and they're just talking about the Earth itself and what we need to do to help the planet, sounded good.
Mm-hmm.
The energy is different. It wasn't loving. It's the concepts were good, but
Yeah.
it's different energy than this other group. So what I'm saying is, in the end, personally, I've totally shut down.
Oh. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll cover differentiation factors between the two. Yeah, okay.
And if it's love, if you feel
Yeah.
it's love.
Well, obviously, I'll include that as part of the. Sure.
Do you know if the Greys are the good guys or the bad guys?
Oh yeah. I call them cosmic cockroaches, but we'll get to them. but yeah, well, I'll cover them too. Sure.
Ascension and fifth dimension.
Ascension.
And fifth dimension. We're starting it.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it's woven together. We'll see.
About Cobra,
Oh.
with him, if he's a reliable source.
Ooh. Okay. We're gonna get touchy. Nice. Okay.
He's a tough one, I know.
Well, no. I definitely have opinions. So easy to. I have opinions on a lot of matters, and I have channels in other matters.
How far inland from the East Coast will any of us have to move in?
Okay, what else? Yeah, that'll be a short answer. That one changes a lot. Yeah.
Are you operating from around the 13th dimension right now today?
That's a really interesting question. That's okay. Yeah.
Update
Picking up on
perhaps
something.
update perhaps on reptilian activity, the rift.
Okay.
Is there a savior now in the world?
Oh, Jesus. No pun intended.
I need to remember all this.
I was going to say, I think I'll stop it now and then we'll ask for more later, because I already I am a double Gemini, but yeah.
Has any other channels to confirm your data, your input that you've gotten?
Okay.
Do you know anything about the current shift that's happening?
Oh yeah, that's definitely part of the main focus of why I do this work, is kind of keeping on par with just the work I do with people and groups. Is a lot to do with kind of like planetary debriefings, in a sense, of what's going on with Mother Earth, Father Earth, and her relationship to the galactic energies and her own transformational process. But I also do a lot with like understanding about the darker side of reality, because unlike a lot of the New Age movement who don't like to look at the darker side of reality, it's been a big part of my life to understand as a spiritual warrior path and as a higher type of a mage energy that I carried for many lifetimes. I first had to do that just for psychic self-defense over 20 years ago when I first got my first psychic attack from a black magician who originally started as a friend of mine but really turned as an enemy. So I had to get my head out of the ostrich syndrome of the spiritual New Age movement a little bit and understand more about the dualistic nature of our reality and be able to see, well, how can we heal that process and not just cut off and be overly religious and like focus on the polarity of light and darkness, or overly New Age where they want to deny that evil or darkness exists and only go towards ascension and not look at actual 3D reality events as any type of validation for or against what they're believing. Originally I was a physics major at NYU. I didn't finish that path. So for me, I've always been in the quest of balancing out science and my logical side of my Gemini energy with the intuitive and the spiritual knowledge, because for me, I always saw why people always cutting to one side, either overly right brain in the New Age movement or overly left brain and like the more traditional mainstream society. So for me, it's always about more holistic brain, because I want to fully experience it and know it, not just feel love, but I want to understand the mechanics behind reality and try to always go in a search of truth to dissect, especially dissecting propaganda, and like the rhetoric of a lot of our society, to see, okay, why aren't we at the state yet that we are supposed to be at? What's holding us back from this ascension process? So I kind of put equal weight in that in my path. So I've also attracted a lot of attention over the years from different, unsavory types of characters in the military-industrial complex who've liked to have tested a lot of their projections on me, let's put it that way. I go a lot more into that also in one of the newer YouTube videos. If you look up my name, it's an interview by James Rink had done with me this past summer. It was put on YouTube about 2 months ago. But I go a lot more detail in terms of like my military abduction, because I also had a whole other conspiracy side of what I've been through and how to recover in terms of my own memories and my own healing process from that, so I can help others as well. What I do in the spiritual sense of the movement is I work with a system I developed as cosmic shamanism. So it's like incorporating, from a more traditional viewpoint, I worked originally more with the Tree of Life and with the Egyptian mysticism, and I used those as two kind of fundamental tiers to build on to access more of my own galactic self, and then help also work with clients so they can connect more to their galactic home worlds, on a multidimensional level that their souls come from. And this is a really big part of my work that I have the most fun with, is helping people in that process of self-discovery and initiation to reconnect with those higher light temples and higher orders. A lot of times it's necessary first to help the person access a relevant Earth lifetime, past life, that can be used as a kind of jump-off point to access more of their galactic kind of states of consciousness. So it could be a past life where you really had mastered or excelled, as an embodiment of a specific ray of energy that you originally came down to the Earth with, say, in one of your earlier incarnations. And from that point, it's easier to use that as a kind of lens and mirror system, so the person can use that as a more accurate mirror to sense where they come from prior to, say, some of the forgetfulness of this lifetime, or the veils that had been put on them, or perpetuated by our own societal conditioning, many variables there. So from doing that for many years with clients, I've also learned a lot more about galactic history and Akashic Record accessing from other planetary systems, because by necessity of holding space for people as well as in group situations. So I've been compiling a lot of information, as well as just a lot of beautiful experiences, of understanding the diversity of how amazing and magnificent creation is, on a galactic scale and beyond it. Some people I've met that have more intergalactic connections, but it's usually more galactic oriented, at least right now, in terms of what's relevant for us to ground. It's like stepping stones. You have to be able to ground like solar energy first, and then starry energy and galactic, and there are like different turns of the spiral of evolution of consciousness. And so humanity is just beginning to really awaken to what the idea is of receiving love from other star systems, and really grounding that into our etheric body, is kind of a helpful process because it's not, it can get a little too airy-fairy when people just say, okay, just focus on unity or love. Well, yeah, that's nice, but we need to be able to understand that there is like a mechanical kind of aspect as well as a spiritual gestalt, energy process through which we transduce and access these higher realms. So obviously working on your chakra system, working or with the Tree of Life with the Sephiroth, for me are really important like fundamentals. Like even if you don't know anything about the Tree of Life, having a well-balanced chakra system or chi energy flow is essential if you really want to confirm or deny things I talk about or for your own experiences to access who you are on a galactic level or even in the past life level. You have to have enough chi energy flow to be able to turn on the dormant circuitry, which does tie into the idea of the pineal gland, because it is a very essential, third eye component to being able to access, not only Akashic records in this plane of reality, but also for you to upgrade your lenses, so to speak, that are in your auric field. Because we oftentimes forget we have 7 bodies, which they talk about a lot in many traditions, 7 chakras in each of the 7 bodies. So sometimes there are blockages not just in our physical, but in these other 7 chakras that might be several feet outside your field. So for the third eye, for example, there are a series of upgrades where we receive other lenses to help us, kind of like lenses in a telescope, where if you're fine-tuning the resolution or the focus of it, then you're able to see a further distance, and then if you want to see something smaller, you wouldn't use a telescope if you want to have the effect of a microscope. You need different types of lenses to focus the light and the focal length. So it's a similar idea, is that when you're, as you begin to know yourself more in that process, it's like really determining, how can you apply that passion, more to your spiritual practice of what you want to access. And for me, it's a full body system. It's not just like, okay, I'm going to go out of my body and access this information, or I'm going to go, be a trance channeler, or leave my body and let something else come through me. Now, for me, it's more of a telepathic, telenosis is a word they used to call for me, my guides, where it's more I go into telepathic rapport, with my spirit guides and with higher beings after I first line up with my larger galactic self, at least part of it, so that there's more of a synchronization of flow between my chakras of my bigger self that can come over me. The same way if you're asking an angel or spirit guide to not only talk to you, but also, become a little more directly interfaced with your field. So these angels and higher beings can only interface with you at points that you are clear and receptive. It's like your antenna structures, and your chakras and in your meridians are like the circuitry for those antenna structures. So if there's cloggy filters, then you're going to have mixed experiences of being able to understand what you're actually accessing. So it's important. That's why healing your own shadow side and being able to resolve any of your fears or judgments or persecutions, any separation that you have inside yourself, any part of yourself that you haven't loved yet, is essential that you heal it, especially if you want to go into higher level, workings, or if you're going to do channeling work and invite beings. Those on the darker side will test you and will oftentimes try to trick you, especially if you're waking up to a certain level of consciousness. It's just part of their role. And in a way, how we as light workers can use that experience that may be deemed negative and convert it into positive is that it gives you an opportunity to fine-tune your own resolution in terms of like lens focusing ability, so you can see what parts of yourself are still in shadow, what parts of yourself are still in separation, because they can mainly work through holes in your aura or aspects of your own shadow side that they then turn up the volume on. The same thing works for the government, for some of the shadow government groups in the NSA who use microwave projection technology to project emotional states on people. If you know your own emotional state and you can identify what is your own shit, so to speak, and what is not, then and really have those holes at a minimum, and you feel an external energy trying to impose that state on you, whether it's mental, auditory, visual, you can then begin to glean a little more discernment as I say, wait a minute, this is not how I would usually react to this stimulus. If I'm feeling, say, normally sad about something and I process it, all of a sudden you can sense the difference because it will feel more imposing. The more you have delineated your own sense of boundaries about like what is your space, right? And what is within your space. And so when something comes in it, your sensitivity level can be higher to be able to, help you navigate, about sensing its location, or at the very least knowing it's not your stuff. And then I use a lot of psychic protection, psychic self-defense techniques are definitely important before any channeling or group meditation. Even if it's a group meditation I'm doing, I would always call on the archangels of the 4 directions and above and below as a basic minimum. I'd usually use other Kabbalistic or Egyptian kind of symbols working with the pentagram or hexagram in specific magical ways, because that was just part of my path, and it's powerful for me to create that utilization of my right brain to be able to use the symbols in conjunction with intention, so that you're creating a screen or filter of lenses around you, like quality control. I'm not going to drink New York tap water, right? So even if I choose to drink it, I want to put it through a filter. So this is like your etheric spiritual filtering system. You don't just be like, oh, it's all love and light, let me just call on Archangel Michael only. It's like, well, that'd be nice, but maybe you want to call on other beings as well, just to make sure that you're getting the real angelic frequency band and not some little shadow group trying to be like, oh yeah, yeah, we're Archangel Michael. You know? So, because there's a lot of fake astral plane, realms where a lot of entities like to just feed off of light worker energies, and in the spiritual religious traditions, I've talked about them. I mean, there are demonic entities and there are angelic entities. There are positive extraterrestrials, there are negative. I mean, that is reality from what I've experienced and what I've seen over many years, and how you want to define that in terms of a paradigm, that's a longer story, in understanding creation. But in the simplest level, there are beings who hold space for the experience of separation, and there are beings who embody unity and love. And it's about us refining our choice as to what we want to go on in terms of our own evolutionary flow. More towards unity, with love being a key, or more towards separation. And it's a perfectly valid choice. The Creator's not judging, in the old sense of the word, which path you choose there, because ultimately it is all one. But for our dimensional viewpoint, we're at a pretty intense time right now, because there are many beings who are choosing to refine, their degree of separation. So, and the puppeteers who've been controlling a lot of our planetary groups and systems and media and energy, transportation, health, at the uppermost echelon, they're pretty clever at being, masters of deception and control. But they're losing more of their power structure on many, many different levels. Even though it seems like they're creating more dramas, part of the reason they're creating more of these dramas is to try to counteract the increasing love energy and actual energy of Gaia's Kundalini flow, which is accelerating. She's restructuring. She's clearing out a lot of her cellular memory and creating a whole new kind of foundation temple floor for what this new kingdom or new age is about. But so the more we can incorporate grounding our energy to like Gaia's new temple floor, so to speak, where love is the foundation of each tile that makes up that floor that you anchor into. And this has to do with the restructuring of the magnetic fields, which have been shifting a lot, especially this past year. It's been, it's been accelerating at 10 times faster rate than scientists originally thought. So there are a lot of things going on that affect our nervous system and our whole circuitry, capacity to be able to absorb light and emanate light. And so when we're dealing with all the electromagnetic smog and all the different technologies that are designed to act more coherently to try to distract you from being a clearer anchor of light, it's even more important that you maintain a certain sense of impeccability of your own sovereignty, of choosing more wisely your decisions of what you were, feeling and thinking, your own spiritual hygiene, kind of practice. Same way we take a shower every day, you need to do like a little aura cleanse every day, like grounding and checking in with your body and with the earth. If you can get out in nature, obviously that's more ideal. In New York City, it's a little harder unless you go to the parks, but definitely, like in Riverside Park, there's a beautiful vortex I do group work at for sun meditations on 84th and Riverside. So if you go there, it's a great vortex. It's got little crystals that are really growing out of the mound there. It's a large mound in the corner of 84th and Riverside. So that's one great spot that helps hook you into the larger grid if you want to just meditate there, especially with the sun. Other spot I use in Central Park is for the obelisk, Cleopatra's Needle, right behind the Metropolitan Museum. I'm doing the last outdoor event there at that location this Thursday for the solar eclipse. We'll be doing a channel guided meditation, or cosmic shamanism experiential is kind of more like the new term that I want to call these things, because it is about bridging, higher shamanic work, but understanding that all traditions need to evolve themselves if they want to really still be around. At 6 o'clock people go to gather, so probably closer to 6:30 time we actually start. Mercury retrograde. So I say 6 o'clock loosely, and basically, but they're still doing construction around it. So we actually gather on the grassy area just in front of the fence, on the obelisk. It's the only open area that you'll see, your ability to take back your sovereignty is important to be able to transmute or transcend some of the so-called limiting conditions that the puppeteers, have been trying to propagate on humanity for so long. And one of the current manifestations that we've been seeing for years is chemtrails. And the thing is about chemtrails, there's a lot more research, a lot more videos and information out there now of people, doing more studies about it, more whistleblowers, thank God, because, for a while it's been a lot more suppressed, even though it still hasn't reached the mainstream media. One of the higher purposes of it, a negative way, is that, which we had gotten confirmed by a CIA agent years ago, was that it's to negatively affect the genetic structure of humanity in order to try to slow down the evolutionary process. And this is an important theme, because you find this theme everywhere. When you go deeper into the Black Ops studies or making contacts, which I've met many contacts over the years, unfortunately a lot of them weren't on the light side, but and harassed me at some point. But every now and then we have some good ones, and We have one in the audience with us today who's one of the good guys. I'm gonna put him on the spot now. Anyway, front row. But the idea here is to understand that it makes it even more important that you detox yourself from these heavy metals which are being sprayed, because the heavy metals are also designed to try to clog up some of your DNA and your cellular structures. Plus, they also use frequencies that they project not just from normal electromagnetic warfare, but from more the Tesla-based type weaponry, which works with the other type of electromagnetic wave, more scalar waves or longitudinal waves. And so it's a whole other type of covert electromagnetic field of energy that they create, which can be used for healing. And I know some people are using it for wonderful healing technologies to help cure people with illnesses with these frequencies upstate New York. But a lot of them that are in the covert scene are using it more to control people, because these frequencies operate more in a bandwidth that connects to our auric field, and more to the biophotons that our cells produce. So this whole area they've been working on for many years of understanding, how to monitor, how to understand, people's auric frequencies, how to track that. So the level of surveillance technology is so far beyond what Snowden's talking about. Snowden's like touching the tip of the iceberg. And they say on the darker side of them it's not just about hacking your computers, it's more about hacking your consciousness and understanding how your firewalls work on a brain level, on an emotional level, on a cellular level, is what they've been studying for many years, trying to create methodologies of technology that combine understandings of different magical systems, and using that as a loosely coined term, which you'll find a lot of these things talked about more the way they describe as information warfare. Some of the older school days were non-lethal warfare technology or covert psychological operations, but you'd be surprised some of the papers and research you can find online and some of the military websites if you just look up information warfare. And usually they won't talk as much about what we're doing here, but they'll talk about, you can find papers about what the U.S. thinks of Russia or China, from several years ago, and they'll go into more detail about classifications of weaponry that the mainstream scientists would never admit even exists. Yet it's clearly pointed out in some of these papers. We'll be adding that in some of the videos, but there's one great, one of the good Pentagon's military website. It's called dtic.mil, DTIC. And it's a public site. They have their classified section, but the normal site, access, they have a tremendous amount of papers, scientific papers on there, on all different topics. And if you have patience to go through it, and you look up like a little Google version of search engine on that website, there'll be papers where they talk about teleportation research, where they talk about these psychotronic technologies that Russia has. Of course, we can understand that anything they talk about other countries, we have it and more. So if you look at it with that understanding, you can glean a little bit better idea of some of the sub-levels of covert technology that we have here, and understand that it's all designed. Well, part of it's designed to create control, obviously. And this understanding that going back to the chemtrail topic. They understand that we've been evolving that we're evolving as a species, and so they're basically trying to interrupt that, as Rupert Sheldrake with the morphogenetic field, scientists, that they're trying to interrupt that 100-monkey principle, where we reach that critical snowball point as a species and are able to spontaneously go into the new DNA field when we've all reached a certain level of love energy in our heart chakra that is properly infused the rest of our being, and then by the certain threshold where we're able to create that positive feedback loop as a collective consciousness, of humanity, and open up more to our true heritage of what is wanting to help us now, which is more of our galactic families that are coming back to us, because we are, so many beings here are from other star systems on a soul level. So, you all are part of the ground crew, who are incarnated, and so as you wake up and read your debriefing manuals again and ask for that, to connect more to your starry heritage, then when the positive ETs start coming in more, with their ships much more directly in the coming years, they can use us as positive vessels to be able to hold space for some of the initiatory changes and grounded changes that are necessary, for us to be as a bridge for the rest of humanity, who may be kind of freaking out when we have a lot of ships landing over major cities, And this is something that they've been showing me for a long time, and there were 2 times when that was going to happen already, but it got pushed back, partly due to the interferences that were going on from some of the negative ET groups and the Illuminati groups who have been using technologies to try to enhance the shadow aspect of what humanity is not claiming responsibility for. So the more we claim responsibility for our own shadow side and really take back our power from what was invested in that fight or in that separation or in that trauma or that wound, then that makes it there's less ground for the forces that want to keep the Earth in a lower dimension. It's less fuel for them to be able to try to negate this 100-monkey principle. So it makes it even more important that we claim our personal self-responsibility about healing and being a vessel of light, because as we do that, we poke holes in the matrix, in the real matrix, of their shadow grids, which literally exists on many different dimensions, partly due to technology, but also in other older Stargate portals that these different groups made different agreements with different negative ET groups that are multidimensional, and they had different plans for the Earth, so a lot of them are pissed off now because they know that they're not going to get the Earth to become part of their dark empire, so to speak, but rather the Confederation of Planets, which is termed at the Law of One books, which I recommend everybody to read. Law of One books by Rob. They're a 5-volume set. The website's llresearch.org, llresearch.org. Some of the best earlier channel material back in the early 80s, and they have good newsletters there. But I discovered them about 20 years ago, and they formed a foundational kind of paradigm that'll wake a lot of people up, and I've tested them for myself over the years in terms of my own growth and channeling capacity. So part of the filter I use, for the channeling, like I said, is definitely the psychic self-defense work, but every time I've gotten clearer about healing my own stuff, because it's not just like you heal your stuff overnight necessarily. Some things you can heal really fast, other things are, take time, as we know. But everything is accelerated now, especially with these eclipses and new energies that are coming in. The capacity for us to make revolutionary changes and a very high evolutionary rate is much faster now. And which is also why they're trying to step up the fear campaign with Ebola and things like that in order to create a contrast to try to distract us from the new energies that are coming in, so that we then use our free will and feed their negative thought form agendas. Because they still need our free will to try to co-opt us. So they do a very good job of that with media and all the different campaigns to divert our energy towards their agendas. So it's fine to be like a journalistic approach and view what's going on. It's important we know what's going on so that we know what we need to heal and release as a society, not to reinforce it with an emotional investment, or fear aspect, but rather knowing it where you need to shine your sword of light into the heart of their little puppet matrix and be able to burst it like a false bubble that it is, instead of being afraid that it's some giant avalanche that's going to come consume you. So there are a lot of layers of just looking at it, psychologically, spiritually, and physically, and also with the chemtrails. We used to do some group work in the past where we had chemtrails, sprayed over us by the obelisk, and one way you can take back power, aside from physically taking supplements to detoxify yourself, like magnesium, malate will help get rid of the aluminum from your brain, from breathing in. Manganese helps get rid of the barium that they spray in there. There's many different things you can take from heavy metals, but those are two good ones. You can also ask on a higher spiritual level, because remember, all these situations where you are supposedly being, where we're being threatened, so to speak, or being are increased opportunities for us to be sovereign in ways that we never thought we could be sovereign, by taking back our power from situations and technologies that we formerly thought were that we formerly thought we might have been kind of like David and Goliath, where you have that capacity, even though they have the behemoth of machinery and situations behind them. You as a messenger of unity, as you embody that more in your being, can be that ray of the true sun that shines out to blast through their clouds of obscurity that they've tried to separate us from, that recognition that we are divine, in our heritage, and that the rays of the sun shine equally on all, but few look towards the sun for really understanding how to shine that light on their path. And so even on the subtle level, they've done that programming to make us afraid of God's natural light and only being this fake light, which is designed more to negatively influence our crown chakra and other facilities, and make us afraid of the natural love energy. The light of the universe is shining through us from all different frequencies, from neutrinos, from positrons, all different types of frequencies, gamma rays, X-rays that are coming in from other star systems. They're not just, if we overly simplify it or thinking of it only from a mechanistic point of view by listening to astronomers only, you can't, it's overly reductionistic if you look at it from a strictly mechanical viewpoint. So you can look at astronomy things and see how amazing the universe is, but there has to be a spiritual component for you to be able to absorb it and understand that you are an antenna and a radiator, right, of that which you seek. So the more you refine what you want to absorb and not just reflect, absorb and radiate and not just reflect, the more you can be a catalyst for change, right, in whatever area you are a messenger in, whatever area you're working in, that is your heart's passion, ideally, you'll be an increased source of light, and then that's faster for us to be able to get on the same page collectively, to be able to at least override some of the heavier weight of the density, of the portion of humanity that has not chosen love and light or are still stuck in the gray zone, So, and be like, okay, we're adjusting our sails on this collective love boat of Gaia to really be able to ground the new galactic energies and be like, okay, this is what our bodies can do now, and this is what Mother Earth is really feeling. And we have to get out of the mindset that Mother Earth is victimized, because that's only perpetuating the Piscean mentality. I used to think that in the past, regardless of what's happening, which we understand there's many injustices that are happening, that have happened to the Earth in terms of pollutants and control agendas, but she's really okay. She's showing whole new sides of her energy. If you let go of oh my God, I have to save the Earth in a lower way, or be like, oh, they're hurting the earth, they have to stop this, and just tune in to see what Mother Earth is really feeling. And you know, she may guide you to help send energy to parts of her body that may be in pain or has trauma or pollution, but the larger part of her and her core that's emanating out the new magnetic fields, she is a blossoming lotus of love, and she is like getting so friggin' strong, you know, with energy coming out of her. So she wants to support everybody, but we have to really ask her the same way we ask our angels and guides. You know, ask, you know, Divine Mother Earth, her essential sun core, her galactic core, because it's not just like, some of the phrases are important because we're not just looking at the core of the earth as a physical core. She has her chakras too, obviously, and it's not just on points of her body. So if we specify what type of energy we want to connect with in Gaia's core, then Gaia can upload that energy to us more easily, like a program or hardware upgrade, you know, for our network system. So there's different levels of where her galactic core, she's creating a mirror of the galactic core in a sense spiritually, you know, like our version of the crown chakra, but in the core of the earth. So by consciously choosing to radiate and use your tree of life, your roots, to connect to her center as it is a divine, you know, heart center space, and realize that you're connected to the heartbeat of Mother Earth, and looking and breathing in the heartbeat of the sun, you know, so it's the sun energy in upper world, Mother Earth core in underworld, and you're in middle world with your inner sun in your heart. So the more you stabilize a pillar of light and realizing that you are love manifest in all three worlds, then you can open up to the next world and to the more of the galactic realm more easily and have a place to ground it. And realizing, okay, where have I been unstable? Where have the pillars in my temple been unstable, or where have they been corrupted? You know, realizing that there are different parasitic influences, different things that have gone on that may have weakened some of your ability to ground certain energies. So you might be able to have a capacity to go out there and tap into good energies, but maybe your lower chakras need some help. Or maybe the area underneath your feet. A lot of people are getting messed with under their feet, and like the sub-root chakras. So when you connect to the core of the earth, you want to really visualize a core of light going all the way down to the core of the earth and back up. And ask the angels and guides and Gaia to clean any of those intervening layers. You know, almost like the way water from a natural spring has to go up through layers of sediment to get purified. It's a similar thing for our own energy field. So you got to make sure that there's not an interruption to that flow, because they've done a lot of technology trickery, so to speak, to try to unground light workers and people in general, where they've created artificial gravity fields, but they've projected it out on underground bases to try to throw people off for their gravity axis. This is one thing that's come up recently that we've been working with to try to counter, or at least to compensate for. So there are a lot of things like that that are going on, but you don't necessarily need to know all the particulars, but the idea is to claim sovereignty over the sub-levels of your subconscious, which are reflected in that space, you know, below your feet going down to the core of the earth. So that's like one idea, because, you know, again, it's all about shadow, but sometimes shadow is very, very sneaky. Well, otherwise it wouldn't be shadow, you know. So in some ways, you know, they've gone to great lengths to understand the mechanics of reality, to see how they could subvert our free will without directly saying that they're doing it to us. It's like the legal fine print to how we give away our power subtly in many situations. So it's the same way. We realize that they've been trying to confine our energy fields to certain limited axes. You know, then we're able to understand that and be like, okay, wait a minute, I don't just exist on a horizontal plane or vertical plane. There's diagonal planes, and there's multidimensional planes. But they've used geometry against us in many ways. Just because a shape is called sacred geometry, what people miss about that is it has to be still qualified with your intention. You know, no shape is inherently good or bad in that sense. It's like it's an antenna. It's a fractal, maybe a mirror, you know, of like a mosaic fractal of what reality is. But what is imbuing that shape? You know, and so with your intention and with your qualification of which you exist. That's why, for example, working with the Tree of Life is one system that I teach is very powerful, because it's about understanding understanding that there are subsets to this fractal pattern that makes up your being, like facets of a crystal. And so if you understand all the facets of your crystal makeup that are mirrored in your body, even by basic systems of chakras working with the Tree of Life energy points, then those are areas that, as you fill in with more intention and with more of your own love, you become more of a living diamond of love and light, potentially radiating into whatever realm you choose to reside in, as opposed to them occluding sections of your crystal being because you were maybe ignorant of the fact that you had that area of your body in resonance with something that maybe wasn't so nice, you know. So it gets quite interesting. It can get complicated, but it's also simple, you know, because it does go back to understanding that inner sun is your heart center. You need to be able to radiate that into all points of your geometry, so that the points of geometry become like lenses, like to be able to blaze your light out as well as to reflect it back into you, like a cocoon, so that you're not just dissipating, you know, energy that should be, you know, your own right to concentrate in your field. Actually, what's the time?
It's like 4:35.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I can say I have to get my own little time checks and I
38.
go on and on.
I wanted to tell you it was 38
Thank you.
minutes ago.
Okay. Chemtrails. I'm gonna go back to some of the questions for you. Chemtrail thing. Hold on, Russell. We got a bunch of questions ready before you came in. About the discernment stuff. Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, some things I'm answering about the discernment with the different entities. Like I said, I always do like a psychic protection before that to create a more of a filtration. And obviously, there has to be a certain level of love energy that I feel from the being, and otherwise I'm not going to necessarily trust it. If it's only about, if they give me fear, if they're about controlling, or if they make me feel more cut off, if they only try to tempt me with power without the love or unity inherent in their field of when they're coming around me, I'm going to be a little more questioning about the full integrity of what that being is about. And just by, first working, say, with the angelic kingdom or with the purity of what they're supposed to emanate, those signatures are hard to duplicate. They can, it's almost like false glamour spells. It's like looking at this light, realizing, well, the light bulb is not the sunlight. If you have a differential where you understand what the sunlight energy is about versus, a basic light bulb, you're not going to be tricked when someone comes in saying that they represent the sun and they're only holding fluorescent lights in their hands. So it's a similar thing on the spiritual level. When you have more discovery about, about your own chakra system, about your own multidimensional self, then you create clearer filters to be able to contemplate and enhance your discernment of what is approaching you if you're invoking it. And that's why I always work with the inner plane energies first, working with the angelic kingdom with the elementals to make sure that the base levels are covered, and so that, and then call in the positive galactic beings, on top of that. And there are many groups, that I work with, and there are different names they have. Even if you don't know that, asking that your higher self and your spirit guides and the specific angels and a certain gridding meditation can create a basic quality control filter system. And there can be more things you can do to test it, and in a way that can go a bit longer or more complicated.
Also using the heart, not so much the head.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, exactly. So if you also be connecting with that heart energy of the earth and really grounding yourself in that sense so that you're in your body at the same time while you're calling in the energy, then, you can trust your body intelligence at the same time you are your own heart or like mental filters that are there. So the more coherent you are, right, as that antenna, as that focal point, the more still you are, then you can sense more where the ripples are coming from that are trying to enter your shoreline, so to speak. Where is their boat about? They put pretty colors around it, but those colors might be hiding a shadow energy. You want to test it out, and if it comes in, you can still obviously protect yourself and call in the right beings at that point. And like, okay, like, thank you for that greeting, but this is not something that I wish to embody at this time. And call extra backup in. And you may need to do that. That's a longer story about different practices. Sometimes I had to get very creative to kick some things out that were trying to invade my field or group situations, and part of that's about being open to the now, to the spontaneous understanding of like what is that messenger trying to convey to you in the now, and being in your own center. And like, okay, the first thing they try to do is knock you off your center. So the more you come back into your center and feel that energy, then the more you can more accurately take appropriate counter actions to redefine your space and not get dissuaded by any negative messengers. Or use certain geometries or symbols or power animals, different things that can be incorporated into the mix, where you're really calling in Gaia's loving hand to surround you, like the hand of God, the sacred Hamsa symbol, but from the earth. It's like Mother Earth is holding you in her hand, in her lotus. And as you work with her more, she creates a natural filter, so that if something's hitting you, it's like them throwing a rock at a mountain. Is that going to hurt the mountain? So the more you're kind of creating that resonance of stability with a larger force that you're part of, the larger you can rise above any of those shadowy emanations. So that's one important point there. That's a longer, you can go to a long topic with that. 2017, 2019 is a couple of years that we have a lot of us focusing on for quite some time. There's just a lot of the grid work we're doing with the Earth and opening up time gates on an astral level and connecting with higher light ships that come over gatherings. There's just a lot of energy being focused on as a bridge between now and where they emphasize those 2 years as a gateway to 2025, which I've talked about in other videos, where 2012 to 2025 is a 13-year window point, for more of our death and rebirth process, and that 2025 is a major pivotal point. That's kind of one of the earlier timelines in terms of us fully being able to go into this new realm. And there are other alignments coming in. 2017, 2019 have to do with the Galactic Center and other higher sources of energy that are going to really be hitting the Earth in a major, like Shaktipat way, literal way, higher gamma rays, X-rays coming in from other sources that are of love and light. And so the more we can clean our system out now, the smoother, the more we do our chelation therapy, spiritually and physically, the more we're able to hear the glory of the song of the Creator more eloquently as it is being shared with the Earth from the higher realms. Because literally, as the Earth is getting shifted, it's like a crystal reconnecting to a larger geode that wasn't even there before, or that she forgot she was part of. So as her crystal symmetries of Gaia's field are getting upgraded and getting freed of the negative webs of dark Orion side energies and other negative scorpionic influences that come from many systems, it's like Gaia's ability to become this new diamond of light is that much more holds that much more refractive capacity. Because it's like she's getting chiseled, new facets. Because she's going through an alchemical transformation by confronting directly a lot of these negative galactic forces that have been invested in the earth. And they kind of embody on a spiritual level energy of galactic underworld. So it's like Gaia's getting a quick lesson of what it's about to be stung by some of the venom of galactic underworld messengers who are not of love and light, but of negativity. And so the higher positive beings are coming in, and we can do more work to accelerate that process to give Gaia this new kind of serum. But in that process, she is becoming stronger, and her refractions of her crystals are getting much more deeper and more have an increased ability to shine light into vectors of light into realms that they never were able to shine before. In other words, she's becoming more beautiful from the experience, even though it's a pretty shitty, kind of points of the process of that intensity. And it gives us an ability to navigate, through areas of our own past karmic flows, where they've influenced us. So a lot of them are sending energy in. So you can even call on your future self in 2019, 2025, 2017 to create a clear bridge to your most beneficent timeline. Because this is the most beneficent timeline that we're trying to focus on, is the glory of our future selves in a full power, full emancipation, reaching back to us from our future to help us keep an eye, to keep the true eye, not the false eye of the false deities or any misuse and third eyes of any negative capstones, dollar bill energies. That capstone is being dealt with, and there's other spiritual warrior work I do with smaller groups, and for a long time, and we're working on specific agendas to help hold space for the positive beings to help kick out and actively work against deconstructing some of the negative grids that the Illuminati and other groups are doing from a negative realm, negative galactic level, and holding the space for light there. And they get pretty intense at times. There's been some really intense stuff going on this past year with that, and we're finishing up stuff with Set, who is one of the main negative Egyptian deities, but actually he's actually a leader of one of the negative Orion groups, one of the leaders. And so there's a whole interstellar politics about stuff that goes on with mythology and where they've intersected our timelines in the past to plant seeds of their agendas. So the higher light beings are doing the same thing in a positive way to help us re-navigate back to this more holistic course where we can embody more love freely, free of the interferences of these shadow DNA messengers, that have been trying to hybridize us into their negative collectives and create a negative resonance from their realms to our reality through a kind of dark web network, literally how it looks. So that's being dismantled, but we're at a really intense point, of just, releasing a lot more stuff. And there's major new Atlantean energies coming in now, too, really as of this past couple weeks. This is part of the reason why this hurricane this week, that the Bermuda is also going up towards the British Isles. We're working on that at the last eclipse, and we're doing a lot more clearing, and they were showing us that there was a new ley line forming in the Atlantic Ocean going out to Ireland from Bermuda and from some ancient Atlantean temples that are in the undersea mountains. So Gaia's, we're waking up some of the deeper ancient Akashic energy fields and ancient vortex alignments that have been suppressed by negative forces and also through geological changes are getting upgraded and re-ramped. So that as that comes up, this hurricane literally would start 2 days after we got this information. Hurricane, ended up doing that path and then turning. So a lot of things happen in memes that reflect in reality things that you can go on as you hold space for changes in a positive way to confirm, or to help you steer your own opinion more wisely. So that hurricane is helping to clear out one of the ley lines that's being formed between Bermuda and Ireland. So it's a positive thing. And we have the comet today that's also going right by Mars. Actually, it went by Mars a couple hours ago, 2:30. And comets are like interplanetary ley line cleansers. So they help to clean out some of the karmic stuff that goes on between the planetary web network of relations. So it's helping to release some of the Mars karma to help upgrade Mars so that Mars can become more of a positive galactic hero for us and not just be like lower suppressed male energy that hurts, society, but rather be more like the Knights of Arthur returning on a grander level, with like Perseus and Hercules energy, as an archetype as opposed to lower Aries. So there's a lot of levels that I go into this work where it gets fascinating because it's about integrating, mythology and spirituality and channelings and angelic realms as a kind of like, system to help upgrade our own fields and to realize that we are so much more diverse and wonderful than we've been limited to think we are. And they're giving me that little stop sign back there. Well, I know I didn't answer all the questions.
You have like 13 minutes.
America and New York City. America and New York City. What do you see?
Oh, well, New York City is also holding a really amazing space right now, too. Just literally as the past month, some of the activations we're doing that where it's coming up, This has to do with the longer story about the new tree of life, because I also teach classes on the tree of life, and there are 2 new energy centers, or sephirot, that have been forming, which relate to the energy over the body. They relate to the knees, but in Hebrew they relate to the concepts of well, in English, to freedom and grace. The energy for freedom is in the right knee. It's called cherut in Hebrew, and chen in the left knee, which is about grace. So the idea is about us stepping more into freedom and grace to us to embody this higher Adam Kadmon, or divine human self. We need to have these qualities are coming in as extra components from Gaia's new tree of life, which is like new pathways forming in her own neural networks. There are also new pathways forming in the tree of life that reflect an upgrade of our body's capacity to connect to higher realms and bridge, these other concepts more easily. And understand of freedom in the right knee is what's coming up now for New York City, Hawaii, and Scotland are 3 points that are holding space collectively, really just as of now, past few weeks, for this blue ray energy of freedom and liberty, and being able to ground that. Archangel Sindariel was one of the newer angels that's been coming in as one of the archangels of that center, Sindariel. So you can even ask to connect to the light city of Manhattan if you're outside doing meditations, because we've been doing this more the past 2 meditations as groups and individuals. You can connect to these higher light temples that are in the higher light city of Manhattan that have been building these new crystal geometries, working with the crystal divas below Manhattan. So they're holding space for this beautiful new reference frame for us to really ground freedom in our lives. What does it mean to have freedom in each sector of your life? Where have you denied yourself freedom and true liberty, not the false liberty, the New World Order aspect of it, but true liberty? How can you really more free? So you can do work with that and ask that energy to come up to really ground it. And when we did that work, that new ley lines forming, there was that 5.5 earthquake in Scotland 2 days later after we did that activation. So there are things shaking up to help clean out the ley lines. And so some of these occurrences are positive, not negative by HARP, But I think they're still telling me I need to stop. What time is it? Is it 5:50?
40.
Okay.
50.
Okay, I
49.
Yeah, 50 minutes, yeah. Send me an email with any questions I didn't answer, and I'll talk to you about it. And I have cards up here. I guess I do private sessions, which is the main thing I do, which are like channel versions. The guy help you tap in. Also on Facebook.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. No, you're
I was thinking about when I see all the hot girls in DC. I'm like, yeah, we could hang.
Yeah, I was thinking about you the past few days, and I was like, man, what's up with Ken? When does he come down here?
Oh yeah.
And
that we need to talk.
Ken, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm terrible with names.
No, don't worry about it.
And and he said you were gonna be down here. I was like, oh, that's funny because I've been thinking about him really strongly. But when are you leaving? What is your schedule?
Tonight.
Shit.
Yeah. This was a short one because my
I just I had a suggestion. You should give like a little